real quick before we get into this video, I'd love it if you guys would like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of my future videos. What I'm about to share today could be controversial, could be a little not the favorite topic for everyone, but I think it's a great educational topic. And that is my experience as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As you guys are probably more familiar with, the nickname Mormons. Yes, there's a good majority of you who are watching who just hate my guts because I said that. And that's okay. That's all right. I think oftentimes the reason people hate so much is because they don't understand the majority of what we have to share, or what we believe in, or anything like that. Regardless of that, that's not my purpose. My purpose isn't to convert you guys or anything like that, but simply just to tell you guys about my experience as a missionary. And my hopes for you guys as I tell this story is that you guys are able to maybe try and find things or ways that you guys can apply some of the changes and things that I learned to your guys' lives so that you can better improve yourselves. And so without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. But it all starts with me graduating high school. And I'm from Utah, so it's kind of a big part of the culture to go out and serve what you would call a mission, which can be served. It's about 18 months to 2 years. 18 months for women when they're 19, but they can keep serving as many missions as they want. And men, it's 2 years, but they only get to serve one mission. As to why that is, I think it has to do with like the age range of how everyone gets married and things like that. And it's just a great way to get men and women alike just off their feet and really working really working towards their life and their goals. It's very similar to like missionary service, because like when you go out into the military, it's 2 years when you're 18 or whatever. And I guess a little bit earlier if you're doing like ROTC. I don't really know all the logistics, but it's usually like a 2-year commitment in the service. And you're on a very strict schedule. It's the same as a mission. Like the mission is very strict. You wake up at 6:30 in the morning, sometimes earlier if your companions are cool with that, and which we did. We woke up at 5 in the morning for like the whole last 2 to 3 months of my mission, which is a really cool experience. You're inside by 9 o'clock every single night. You go to bed at 10:30. You don't you don't go on social media unless you have special permission. And in my case, things kind of changed, but so we did get to use social media a little bit, but that was just how things adapted with the time and everything like that, so that we could stay productive and and then you don't watch movies. We don't watch movies unless they are made by the church. So things that are like really spiritual and uplifting, that have the purpose of educating, right? So it's only things that are really going to keep you spiritually strong. We study like hours and hours and hours at a time of the scriptures, and it's quite a crazy experience. And we move around quite frequently. Anyway, so all this aside, I was 18 and I submitted my papers. And the way I submitted my papers, it was very strategic so that I could leave right before Christmas, so that I could come home right before Christmas, so that I could be with my family. That was the plan, and it worked out that way actually. As I submitted my papers, you write down a little bit of things about yourself, like if you do have any idea as to where you want to go, they take that into consideration. But sometimes, the Lord's plan isn't quite your plan, and so things are different. For example, I wanted to go to Russia, so that was what I put in my papers. I want to go serve in a Russian mission out in the Siberian wilderness. I wanted to have a crazy experience. And sometimes missionaries get kidnapped, and it sounds really, really crazy, but you're gonna hear a lot from some missionaries that that's kind of what they wanted, some experience like that, some spiritual experience where they had to suffer through really hard things. And also, so you have dad lore, so you have some stories to tell your kids. And that's exactly what I wanted. But by the time I got my mission call back, and how they do that is they look at a picture of you, they pray about you, one of the members of the 12 apostles, and they decide where you're going to go. And they do this for hours every single day. Anyways, The Lord had decided that I needed to go serve in a place called Spokane, Washington. And hey, buddy, don't do it. The Lord had decided I needed to go serve in a place called Spokane, Washington, which at the time I had never heard of it. Spokane, in fact, was pronounced as Spokane by me as I read it. And I was like, what the heck? And which is really funny. You know, I didn't know that. Most people know what Spokane, Washington is, but I didn't. And I was assigned to leave December 18th to the Missionary Training Center, where I would be trained for, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, but I was there for an extra week because of Christmas and how that aligned with the transfer dates. And I just want to say that was one of the coolest experiences. That morning of December 18th, I said my last goodbyes to everybody and left into the world. And I didn't know if I was going to see them again. I didn't know what was going to happen to me on the mission. I knew that the Lord was going to protect me, but I didn't know if maybe I got hit by a car or something. If something like that was going to happen to me on my mission, which you'll find that I came close to many experiences like that as I continue to share this story. And another thing was I wasn't sure if my family was going to be around. Like, if while I was gone during these 2 years, if something would have happened to my family and say like a family member passes away or something, like that was terrifying to think about. I didn't want to think about it. It made me hesitate about a lot of things. And you hear a lot of stories about things like that, but it happens very rarely. You know, it's just you go out there because you know you have a duty and it is your duty to go and serve the Lord. If you know so much about him, if you know he's changed your life, then that's your purpose, to go out there and share that, how he can change everyone else's life too. And at least invite people. That was our whole purpose, not to make them members of our church, not to get them baptized, but to invite them to accept his love, you know, accept him. And I learned a lot about that as I kept going, but I left in the field December 18th, said goodbye to my family, and immediately you realize you have to become a man. You have to grow up. You have to stand up for yourself and what you believe in. Because the next 2 years were going to be the hardest 2 years of my entire life, but at the same time somehow manage to be some of the most wonderful and powerful experience 2 years of my life. And I will go down in history and say that those are as of the 22 years I've been alive, those 2 years of my life impacted me more than anybody would ever have the ability of knowing. I've experienced things and had to go through things on my own and at the same time be so comforted by Jesus Christ and learning that he was there for me through all those hardships. Yeah, I went through the whole MTC, had my first Christmas away from home. That was very hard, kind of an emotional experience. I don't really cry. I didn't cry then, but it was just very weird. It was one of the hardest experiences I ever had to experience. It's really weird. I went from having so many friends out at home in high school, being able to do something every single night and just have crazy fun every single day, to just having nothing, you know, really feeling alone. And I'd never felt so alone, and that was probably designed by God so that I could truly be prepared for the next 2 years. If anyone's ever felt pure loneliness, you know that it's very hard. Anyways, that 3 weeks was done, and they shipped me off. The MTC was the coolest place. There was people from all over the world: China, England, Russia, Ukraine, Tonga, Samoa, Australia, like from every single place on the map, right? And they were all there in one place, not everyone knowing English, but getting along so well in the harmony of the gospel. And I had left that place, and I knew I was going to miss it, and I did indeed. And we got on that plane. A lot of things happened. We had a lot of experiences that could have prevented us from really going out on a mission. Like, straight off out of the doors, we hopped on a train, and a guy jumped in front of it and killed himself. And it was that would have been a traumatic experience had we seen what had happened. Luckily, we didn't, and that could have got us sent home, because if you see anything traumatic like that on a mission, it is recommended that they do send the missionaries home for obvious reasons, for mental health, for things like that. It was a pretty freaky thought. And we had to fill out all these police forms. We missed our flight, and so we ended up getting on a flight super late at night to Spokane. And you can tell, like, I'll just say, like, you can tell what kind of people are going to be in the place that you live by the people in the airport. And, you've got, everyone was covered in tattoos and a lot of cowboys at the same exact time. There's a lot of guys with swastikas on their heads, and there was a lot of Native Americans, things like that. It was just such a diverse and, like, almost cartoon-like. I don't want to say that because that's going to make it sound bad, but I just have no other words to explain how random it all was. Like, there was just people from all, like, seemingly you would never expect to see sitting together, all in the same place at the same exact time. And I was excited. I was really excited because that's what I wanted. I wanted diversity. I wanted to teach to tribes, gangs, mobs, because I knew that was going to give me the coolest stories to tell. But quickly, I learned it wasn't about the stories. It was about my relationship with Jesus Christ. Though I did get these stories, I also built a powerful relationship with Jesus Christ. And I really learned what his atonement was truly about. When you think 24/7, all day, every day about God, you have no time to think about anything else or distract yourself with social media or movies or anything like that. You can't imagine how many miracles happen in your life. Like, people we met. I was on a college campus for a lot of my mission in a place called, I went to WSU, I was at Gonzaga. I finished my mission back at WSU, and then I served a lot of the time in Spokane, as well as some of the bordering countryside, smaller towns, just barely on the Canadian border. But all those places, I could see the hand of God. And every time I was stuck on the idea that I'm all alone, I'm away from family, I don't know what's going on with them, I was brought back immediately to Jesus Christ and why he died for me, why he suffered for me and for you guys alike. And that really inspired me to just get back to work. I wish I had like 4 hours, like 12 hours just to tell you guys everything, but I'm going to try and shorten it down as much as possible. But I was immediately trained by two of some of the greatest missionaries I could have possibly been trained by. They were both in the leadership of the mission. They were what you would call assistants to the president, which was the mission president. And there's only two at a time, and every single person in my house was an assistant at some point or going to become an assistant. And my trainer in particular had just barely been released, and so he was in this like soldier mind where you don't see a lot of missionaries like this. He was a conqueror, like didn't give up. Always 100% of his time was God's time. Never wasted a single second, never complained, never cried, never did anything like that. He was always focused on me as companion and the people that we were serving. And to prove that, one of the last few days of those 6 weeks I had with him, one of the older missionaries that served on the campus had bought him some shoes so that he could look nice for his family when he got home in Georgia, where he was from. And he took his old shoes off, and I noticed that the soles were falling apart. And we had been walking in snow, and like I'm talking lots of water. Like we were walking in at least half a foot of water most of the time because I'm in this because at WSU you're in a place called Pullman, which is in the middle of a geographical area called called the Palouse, which is just a bunch of hills. And so wherever it dips down, the snow is melting and creating these giant these little ponds for us to walk in. Of course, we didn't have a car, so we were walking a lot. We didn't have bikes either because you can't bike in the snow. Not quite the same. It's not as efficient as a missionary. And especially because we're specifically college missionaries. We're there for the students, so we're on campus all day. We weren't like going very far. And I had no idea. Like, my feet were freezing. I had brand new shoes. My feet were freezing and soaking every single night. But he didn't even have soles on his feet. And he was still out there serving. He never complained about it, never brought it up. And I was so humbled when he left to go home. It was just such a miraculous experience. But it was there that I also learned another thing was that same night that he left, I was also given my first true leadership position as a missionary. It was what you call a district leader, where you manage a small district of missionaries, which I can't remember how many were in my district, but that was crazy because I was still in training. I was just going into my second training phase, and they had told me that the last time they had seen that was in like two years before me, which is really cool. So I was just super humbled because I didn't feel ready for that, and I don't think I was, but I think the Lord saw something in me and value in me that I don't think anybody else saw, and that brought me closer to God. Because to me, I had become this really shy, scared, kind of quiet person. That wasn't me in high school, but as a missionary, it was definitely me. So I was very humbled to experience that. And I was given the opportunity to minister to each of these missionaries and at the same time go out and help people. We had people come to us who said that the Lord had answered their prayers and told them to go find us, and they had found us that night. And we had many other experiences that were just miraculous. I would have never, ever thought could ever possibly happen. Us being able to use our priesthood authority that we've been given to go and minister to each of those college students as well, that was super powerful. And then as I got shipped out from the campus, I was super sad. I knew I was going to miss WSU a lot. And I was sent straight down to what you would call probably kind of the ghettos. It was pretty ghetto. It was a really ghetto area in Spokane. I'm not going to lie. Where we covered the Gonzaga YSA, which covered a large area. YSA just means young single adult. So we were covering all the young single adults in that area in kind of like the broken neighborhoods with a lot of meth problems and things like that. And we were having to help a lot of people. But at the same time, COVID had just begun, and we were told that day to take off our name tags and our shirts and ties and to not go outside. And it was like that for another like 6 months or so like that. We just weren't allowed to leave the house, which is really hard as a missionary. You have nothing to entertain you. You sit there and you pray and study the scriptures all day, and that's all you have to do. All you can do. And you call people all day, every single day. That's all you can do. And I had never wanted to. There were times I wanted to go home, but I knew I had to stay. I couldn't go home. If I asked to, they would have sent me home, right? But I knew that my commitment wasn't a basic commitment. This was a commitment to God, and you don't ever mess with a commitment to God. So I stayed the whole time. I experienced hard things. I kind of fell out of the rules that we had at times. I wanted to be lazy. I wanted to be dumb and stupid because I was young, and quickly I was brought back to God and humbled, and I was reminded that I needed to keep going. I experienced a lot of things, a lot of scary experiences there in Spokane once we were allowed out of the house. People were very hostile. People are super, super mean. When you're a missionary, everyone wants to treat you like an enemy. I had doors slammed in my face, and that didn't even bother me. That was the least of my worries. It was the people that would call you names and scream at you and make fun of you on even holidays. I remember it was Father's Day, and I was really missing my family. I wanted to be home, and same thing on Mother's Day. And I remember it was either Mother's Day or Father's Day. We went to go talk to a lady, and she just started making fun of us and yelling at us and just being. I've never had anybody be so unkind to me or anything. And she didn't understand, so I'm not gonna hold it against her. But things like that were really difficult. And we just got back to work. We kept going. And it was at that time I got really bold, and I was just getting frustrated. I'm like, I have to help people. And soon after that, I was called to a new area, which was the Valley of Spokane. And this particular area we lived in was kind of a more poor area. The valley's pretty nice, but this area was a little bit different. A lot more. It was actually a little bit scarier. We dealt with a lot of hoarder houses. We were cleaning a lot of hoarder houses. We met a lot of scary people that we came to love, and we learned to love. And we're, quite frankly, even though we were imperfect, God really gave us a different perspective of these people, and that was awesome. I almost got robbed one of those nights. It was 15 minutes after our curfew. We were supposed to be inside, but we were trying to help a lady. And it's the spirit of the law. You just have to go help people, It's you aren't going to be like, oh, sorry, I can't help you anymore because I got to go to bed, right? But we were just helping her, and it was only 15 minutes after. We are just finishing up the night, and we almost got robbed. And I just hear this guy running at me, sprinting full speed. And in Spokane, we had heard a lot from the police and things like that, that people will carry heroin needles around. And we were actually helping a lady who's just barely a victim of this. And they'll stab you in the neck with a heroin needle when you're like in an alleyway or something. And they will steal all of your stuff, do probably other things to you, beat you, and sometimes even kill you. And, it's like, what can you do? And that high, if you do live, if they don't kill you, that high will last for like another like 48 hours or something like that. So just a really long experience. Or maybe it's 24 hours, I can't remember. And a guy was running at us from behind. We were in this alleyway, and I hurry and turned around. This guy was like this close to my face. Nobody ever does that. And he just like stood there and stared at me, and he's like, sorry. And then he like walked off and left. That was weird. But it was like things like that. I was protected by God. I don't know what he saw in me. I'm an imperfect servant of God, but maybe the Lord was protecting me. Maybe the Lord showed him something differently. Maybe the Lord communicated something to him that I don't understand. And that was a cool experience. We helped the lady out that night. Whenever you are trying to do something really, really good, really, really bad things are going to happen. Right after that, I got shipped to a place called Coeur d'Alene. Actually, we were slightly outside of the town of Coeur d'Alene. We were in Coeur d'Alene. We lived in Coeur d'Alene, but our area covered an area where actually at the time, the Aryan Nation Brotherhood, like their headquarters were, which I think it got burnt down a little bit later. I don't know if it was like before we were there or after, but there was still a lot of like skinheads and, kind of scary guys out there that we had to help. And even though they are so you don't trust them, they're not necessarily people you support, you learn to love them regardless and like have a Christ-like love for them, because when you are a servant of Jesus Christ, when you have his name on your chest every single day, you have to be like him in an essence. And we're far from being like him, but we were given gifts that I don't think I would ever have now unless I was in that calling again. You really learn to love these people. You become unafraid of every single situation. You go to those scary neighborhoods where there's a lot of crime. You go and knock on those doors where missionaries have had guns and knives pulled on them before. You do it regardless. Why? Because God's gospel and his work is greater than I. So I did it anyways. We all did it. Every single missionary is going to be like that. And I was never afraid of those situations. I had kind of scary experiences that I would be terrified of now, but I wasn't afraid. It wasn't about me. I was there for God. Coeur d'Alene was a wonderful place. I was given a special assignment from my mission president at that time. When I had gotten there, the mission president had just shared, he told me, hey, I need you to fix this house. There's been a lot of issues. And there had been like 4 or 5 missionaries that had been sent home for not doing they're not doing the best things, not being as worthy, kind of got into a lot of trouble. They all got sent home early in that same house. And so he'd wanted me to work with those missionaries because there's still a lot of disobedience there. And so I had worked really, really hard, and we had all kind of like become this powerful household. We all were doing really good things. And by the end, the missionaries I was staying with were getting rid of their separate phones that they had somehow smuggled in and things like that. And we all got right back to work and started seeing many miracles. Immediately after that, I was called to another leadership position, which is called a zone leader, which is you've got your district, you've got 2 districts per zone. And when you're a zone leader, it's you and one other missionary. You cover a whole entire zone of 2 districts, a huge, large geographical area. And I went straight back to the Spokane Valley, but on a side that I wasn't in before, a little bit nicer than the other side. There were some kind of more ghetto areas, but overall it was a pretty good area to be in. And we were kind of right next to what you'd call the mission home. So the center of the mission where the whole main base of operations is. So we're dealing with lots of like senior missionaries, a lot of other missionaries, and working very closely with like the leaders of the mission and kind of doing errands for them. And saw many miracles there. That was a powerful experience for me to learn how to become a better leader and a better influence to the people that I was to serve with. And I felt very incapable. When I got there, I was like kind of intimidated because I was like, wow, these people are all greater than I am. And why am I in this position where I have to help them out, you know? But again, the Lord sees things in people that you often yourself don't notice. That's why he called Peter. That's why he called imperfect servants. It's because he needed imperfect servants, because they were humble enough to do God's will. And not saying I was a very humble person, because I wasn't, but I learned to be humble through these experiences. Um, and then after that, I was called. It was funny because the mission president, when I had first gotten the mission, he had said, "Don't worry, Gabe," or Elder Bowman at the time. He said, "Don't even worry, Elder Bowman." He's like, "I'm never going to send you to the boons, as we called it. Never going to send you out to the countryside because I know you can't handle it." Because I'm a city guy. I'm like, oh, phew. I'm like, thank the heavens, right? Nope. God had other plans. And that same mission president, his last transfer of being the mission president there before we had gotten a new one, and mission president served for 3 years. He sent me out to a place called Colville, Washington, which is just a few hours south of the Canadian border. And in fact, that area did cover Canada. And I was going to be the zone leader there, which was really exciting and nerve-wracking because I'd never been out in the country before. I was not used to it. And in fact, that first 2 weeks, because of how different it was, I had never been so depressed. But I learned to love it. And I had met the most humble, sincere people. The people who, like, I've never met people more hopeful for Jesus Christ to intervene in their lives, help them with their addictions. This was like one of the most povertous areas in Washington, this little town. And then we covered another area called Northport. We had two separate houses. Actually, we had three houses that we would stay in. One was our main house in Colville. Then we would take like a 2.5 hour trip up north to the like 6 miles south of the Canadian border. We like into this trailer that was literally on the Canadian border. It was this little tiny trailer that had like weird, mysterious bugs in the beds and things like that on this really humble ranch where people like couldn't. They would still feed us, but they couldn't afford to go buy groceries for themselves, and it was just humbling. It was so humbling. I couldn't believe someone would want to help us so much. And um and we would do a lot of things. We did a lot of farm work. We worked on a lot of ranches. We worked on hog farms. We did a lot of things. And then the other house we lived at was a shack. It had no doors. It basically was like plastic walls and a roof, like on the Canadian border, right on like on the Columbian River. And like it was the coolest experience to sleep in there, but one of the most terrifying experiences because you'd hear like weird animals like coyotes outside. There's a lot of cougars and just crazy animals in the area, and it was just terrifying. You're like, I have no idea what's going on out there, but I just pray I'll make it through the night. And there's always mysterious like spiders floating around like on the strings on their webs in our like next to our beds and things. We're like, oh, whatever. And we had many wonderful experiences, and then just as things were going really, really well, I was helping a lot of missionaries out. I was given I received a call one night from our mission president. He said, "Hey, Elder Bowman, I need you to pack all of your bags, and get ready. Don't tell anybody in your house, but you're going to be leaving." So initially, what this was I was probably going to be called to be an assistant for the mission president, which is super exciting. I wanted I was scary to have an opportunity like that, but very exciting. But at the same time, what this had meant was I was going to finish my mission as in an area I'd already been in. And I was kind of disappointed because I had a great uncle who kind of hasn't been around our family, who at the time had since kind of fallen away from the gospel, living in an area I needed to go back to. I couldn't serve him before because of COVID, and that was back on the WSU campus. He lived just over the border into Moscow, Idaho, which we would have covered. And that whole day I was all alone. You're supposed to be with a companion 24/7 as a missionary, but I was all alone in the mission office. They're trying to figure out how to transfer me. And I had I told everyone the morning I was leaving that I didn't know if I was going to come back, and that was kind of sad for them. These brand new missionaries and things and friends that I had made. And as it happened, like I said, God had other plans, and they made a switch, and I got sent right back to WCU, and mission president said, "Hey, looks like we had." He said, "I was looking through, and I can't trust anybody else to go to this area. I need you to go here." And the reason why I couldn't trust anybody else is because it is a very worldly scene. It is Sodom and Gomorrah. You've got, I'm not joking, I got flashed just about every single week. And so if you as a man cannot handle or control yourself mentally and in the moral side of things, you're going to fall as a missionary. You are going to make some serious mistakes. So people who go there have to be very trusted. I was even more grateful to go back there, and I was fine not having that advancement in leadership. And I got to go and I got to serve that uncle of mine, and just the many experiences I had there it was so spiritual, so powerful. I got to train a lot of missionaries. I got to do a lot of really awesome things. But most importantly, it was the last week of my mission. 2 years ago, from almost like 2 years ago, from around this time, I got to stand in front of a congregation of students and tell them why I have a testimony of Jesus Christ and how I know he lives and blesses our lives every single day. I told them that I would be going home, and that the past 2 years I'd been serving a mission for him. And so many hard things were happening that week. One of my really close friends on the campus, one of the students that I had made friends with, had tried to commit suicide. And a lot of things were happening, so many things, a lot of backlash, a lot of people were kind of going against us, kind of trying to separate us from everybody else. And I had no idea why this was happening, but I knew I had greater things to do. I went out and I worked as hard as I could. We met a lady, her house was completely booby trapped. Just a few nights before I left, after I'd gotten to talk to all those students and bear my testimony to them. And she was scared initially, but she let us in. She had told us about how she had someone try and break into her house. She lived in this little single wide trailer. And she knew that we had been sent by God. And she said that when she initially saw us, she thought that we were angels, right? And that was kind of a cool experience. And I'd never met someone so ready I'd never met someone who needed the gospel more than her. Everybody needs the gospel, but she truly wanted nothing else. We got to help her. We got to teach her. Again, I got to share my testimony. So I know Christ lives. I know he died for our sins so that we can be made whole, and that we aren't defined by our mistakes, but instead crafted through them. That by the will of Jesus Christ, we can become better people every single day. And then I left. I went home and saw my family. I was released as a missionary, and that feeling of being a missionary, that mantle of greatness that I got to carry for those 2 years was gone. I took the name tag off, and I had to readjust to the world, which is harder than the mission in a lot of ways. But I will never be more grateful for that experience. Being a missionary was so powerful. And if any of you guys ever meet the missionaries, I invite you guys to ask about their experiences. In that 2 years, I had guns pulled on me. I was almost robbed. I was yelled at, screamed at, made fun of almost daily. But I've never felt the love of Jesus Christ more than when I was in the complete and utter service of him. And my only invitation for you guys is to serve him, to commit yourselves to serve him. You don't have to leave your family for 2 years. You don't have to sacrifice video games, TV, and your cell phone. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to be You just have to have faith, hope, charity, and love with an eye single to the glory of God, and you'll be qualified for the work. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know, guys. Let me know if you guys have any other questions in the comments below, and I'll probably make a video about it. Anyways, please consider subscribing, liking, and hitting that bell icon so you don't miss any of my future videos. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.